Welcome to pile number 1. You feel sad because you're exhausted from constantly having to defend yourself, fight battles, or stand your ground. The Seven of Wands shows that you're tired of always being in defensive mode, always having to prove yourself, and never getting to just rest and be accepted. Your sadness comes from feeling like you're fighting alone. The Seven of Wands shows one person standing against many. You feel like it's you against the world, like no one has your back, and like you're constantly having to fend off challenges, criticism, or opposition without support or allies. You're sad because you can't let your guard down. The Seven of Wands requires constant vigilance and readiness to defend. You're tired of always having to be strong, always having to protect yourself, and never feeling safe enough to relax and be vulnerable. This exhaustion from perpetual defensiveness is wearing you down emotionally. Your sadness stems from feeling attacked, challenged, or questioned constantly. Whether it's in relationships, at work, or in your life generally, you feel like people are always coming at you, testing you, doubting you, criticizing you, or creating obstacles. You're sad because you just want peace but can't seem to find it. You feel sad because your boundaries aren't being respected. The Seven of Wands often appears when we're constantly having to re-establish boundaries that others keep crossing. You're tired of having to defend your space, your choices, your values, and your limits over and over again. Your sadness comes from feeling like you have to fight for everything. Nothing comes easily, nothing is given freely, and you have to battle for every bit of progress or recognition. This constant struggle is emotionally draining and makes you sad that life feels like such hard work. You're also sad because you might be creating unnecessary battles. The Seven of Wands can indicate being overly defensive or seeing threats where there aren't any. Part of your sadness might come from recognizing that your defensive stance is isolating you or making situations more difficult than they need to be. Your sadness stems from feeling like you can't win or that victory is exhausting even when you do win. The Seven of Wands shows that even when you successfully defend your position, you're left tired and wounded. You're sad because winning doesn't feel good when it costs you so much energy and peace. You feel sad because you want to be able to trust people and situations, but past experiences have taught you to stay on guard. This inability to trust or relax creates a deep sadness. You long for the ease of not having to be defensive all the time. Overall, you feel sad because you're exhausted from constant fighting, defending, and standing your ground alone. You're tired of the battle and longing for peace, support, and the ability to let your guard down without fear. Welcome to pile number 2. You feel sad because everything is moving too fast and you can't keep up or catch your breath. The Eight of Wands shows that life is coming at you rapidly. Things are changing quickly, and you're overwhelmed by the pace and unable to process it all. Your sadness comes from feeling rushed and pressured. The Eight of Wands brings urgency and speed. You feel like you don't have time to think, feel, or process before the next thing happens. This constant acceleration leaves you feeling stressed, scattered, and sad that you can't slow down. You're sad because you feel like you're missing things or can't be present. When everything moves this fast, you can't savor moments, can't fully experience what's happening, and can't give proper attention to anything. This creates a sadness of feeling like life is passing you by even as you're actively living it. Your sadness stems from lack of control over the pace and direction of your life. The Eight of Wands shows things flying toward you that you didn't necessarily initiate. You feel like events, demands, and changes are happening to you rather than being directed by you. This loss of agency creates deep sadness. You feel sad because communication and connection are happening too fast and superficially. The Eight of Wands can indicate rapid-fire messages, quick conversations, and surface-level interactions. You're sad because you long for deeper, slower, more meaningful connection, but everything feels rushed and shallow. Your sadness comes from exhaustion. Moving at Eight of Wands speed is physically and emotionally draining. You're sad because you're tired, you can't rest, and the moment you try to stop, you feel like you'll be left behind or buried under what you didn't keep up with. You're also sad because you had to let things go or leave things behind to keep moving at this pace. The Eight of Wands doesn't allow for carrying much. You might have had to sacrifice relationships, opportunities, self-care, or things that mattered to you because they slowed you down. Your sadness might come from knowing the rapid pace isn't sustainable but feeling unable to slow down. You can see that you're burning out, that this speed is unhealthy, but external circumstances or internal pressure keeps you racing forward anyway. You feel sad because you're experiencing so many changes at once and haven't had time to process or grieve what's ending while new things begin. The Eight of Wands brings multiple things simultaneously. You're sad because you're overwhelmed by change and haven't had space to adjust emotionally. You might also feel sad because despite all the movement and activity, you're not sure you're heading in the right direction. Speed without clarity is distressing. You're moving fast, but you're sad because you're not sure if you're going toward what you actually want. Overall, you feel sad because life is moving too fast, you're overwhelmed by the pace, and you long for the ability to slow down, catch your breath, and be present instead of constantly rushing forward. Welcome to pile number 3. You feel sad because you're consumed by anxiety, worry, and dark thoughts that won't leave you alone. The Nine of Swords shows that your sadness comes from mental torment, overthinking worst-case scenarios, and fears that keep you up at night and cloud your days. Your sadness is deeply connected to insomnia and exhaustion. The Nine of Swords is the sleepless nights card. You're sad because you can't rest, your mind won't quiet, and sleep doesn't bring relief. This lack of restorative rest compounds your sadness and makes everything feel heavier. You feel sad because you're carrying guilt, shame, or regret about something. The Nine of Swords appears when we're haunted by our mistakes, things we've done or failed to do, or situations we feel responsible for. This self-blame and inability to forgive yourself creates profound sadness. Your sadness comes from feeling isolated with your pain. The Nine of Swords shows someone alone in the darkness with their thoughts. You're sad because you feel like no one understands, no one can help, and you're suffering in isolation without support or relief. You're sad because your mind is creating nightmare scenarios and catastrophic thinking that feels overwhelming. The Nine of Swords indicates that much of your sadness comes from what you're imagining or fearing rather than what's actually happening. But these mental constructs feel just as real and painful. Your sadness stems from feeling hopeless or like things will never get better. The Nine of Swords can bring despair and the sense of being trapped in suffering with no way out. You're sad because you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel or believe that relief is possible. You feel sad because you're experiencing or have experienced betrayal, loss, or heartbreak that continues to torment you. The Nine of Swords shows swords piercing the heart. Past wounds are still bleeding, and you're sad because the pain hasn't healed and memories keep reopening the injuries. Your sadness comes from mental health struggles, depression, anxiety, panic, or psychological pain that feels unmanageable. The Nine of Swords is deeply connected to mental health challenges. You're sad because your brain chemistry or thought patterns are working against your well-being. You're also sad because you feel like you can't escape your own mind. The Nine of Swords shows that the tormentor is your own thoughts. You're sad because you can't get away from yourself, from the constant loop of worries and fears that your mind produces. You might feel sad because you're keeping your suffering hidden and pretending to be okay when you're not. The Nine of Swords often appears when we're suffering silently. You're sad partly because you feel you can't share your true state with others or ask for the help you need. Overall, you feel sad because you're mentally and emotionally tormented by anxiety, worry, guilt, or dark thoughts. Your sadness is deep and accompanied by sleeplessness, isolation, and the exhausting weight of your own fearful mind. This is a heavy sadness that needs support, rest, and compassion.